Welcome all of you for our Sri Aurobindo's 150th year, and we are very happy to see you all for our Master's birth celebrations. So I'm going to give just a few introduction what is integral yoga and how we take this week towards unfoldment of integral yoga ways and means and how to reach the higher consciousness through our distinguished speakers. Today first we have Dr. Deshpande ji here amidst us. So we kindly welcome him and we start with Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga. Sri Aurobindo began the practice of yoga in 1905. In 1910 he came to Pondicherry. During his 40 years in Pondicherry he worked out a new system of spiritual development which he called the integral yoga. In 1926, Mother founded an ashram where all life is yoga could be put into practice. Among Sri Aurobindo's many writings of the Pondicherry period, the best known are The Life Divine, The Synthesis of Yoga, and Savitri. In the yoga practiced here, the aim is to raise to a higher consciousness and to live out of higher consciousness alone, not with the ordinary motives. This means a change of life as well as change of consciousness. Life must be accepted and therefore it has to be a field of experience and to get free from ordinary desires. This yoga aims at conscious union with the divine in the supermind and transformation of the nature. The objective of this yoga is to transcend mind and enter into divine truth of Satchidananda, which is not only static but dynamic, and raise the whole being into that truth. So let us see our speaker Deshpande ji. He recently received Aroratna Award for the year 2022 for his invaluable contribution in the fields of research and education. He joined Sri Aurobindo Ashram Pondicherry in search of deeper academic and spiritual matters. Here in Ashram's International Center of Education, he taught at higher level for 30 years physics and a few other subjects such as astrophysics, Savitri, the future poetry, science and society. During the same period, he was for 8 years the associate editor of Mother India, a monthly review of culture published by the ashram. Dr. R.Y. Deshpande did his science studies from Osmania University, Hyderabad, India in 1955 and joined as a research physicist at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai in the same year. Later he worked at Lawrence Radiation Laboratory, Berkeley, California, USA and Baba Atomic Research Center, Mumbai. The Aroratna Award for the year 2022 for his invaluable contribution in the fields of research and education. While at Bach, he was in the beginning engaged in particle detectors and crystal growth. Later he headed several atomic energy and space projects in advanced technology. He has some 50 research papers published in national and international scientific journals. He was also an examiner for a number of PhD theses in the field of solid state physics. Deshpandeji's literary activities include writing poetry, essays, articles, book reviews, comments which have been published in a few cultural periodicals. He is a published author of some 50 books of poetry, literary criticism, Aurobindonian philosophy and culture, 2 reflective books on science and related social matters. So, R.Y. Deshpandeji's anthologies of poetry includes titles like All is Dream Blaze, nod of Nandi, collected poems, narratives, collected poems, musings and marvels, and title goes on. So without much ado, I like to invite Deshpande ji to start today's topic on Savitri, the secret knowledge. Thank you.
Very much. Shall we start? Om Tat Savituravaram Rupam Jyoti Parasya Dhimahi Janna Satyena Deepayet. Let us meditate on a most auspicious poem of Savitra, on the light of the Supreme, which shall illumine us with the truth. Light of the Supreme, which shall illumine us with the truth. Light of the Supreme, which shall illumine us with the truth. Parasya Jyoti. This is Sri Aurobindo Gayatri Mantra, given in the mid-1930s. He had simply written down on a piece of paper, but fortunately that piece of paper has been recovered and it is available in the ashram archives. This mantra, Gayatri Mantra in Sanskrit poetry, consists of exactly 24 syllables, 24 words. And there is something significant about it, in the sense that we have now Sri Aurobindo Savitri exactly running into 24,000 lines. So 24 words of the mantra, syllables of the alphabets of the mantra, 24,000 lines. In other words, Sri Aurobindo Savitri itself is the Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri Mantra. And what does the Gayatri Mantra do? It will illumine us with the truth. It will illumine us with the truth. That is the power of Gayatri Mantra. The mother speaks of Savitri as a supreme revelation of Sri Aurobindo's vision. Certainly, it is a revelation, but the word revelation does not simply mean something like which is said. The power of the mantra, the power of the revelation is to realize what it is, to bring that thing into manifestation, to bring that into our daily life, make our life itself divine life. That is what the mantra does. Power of mantra means that realization of what it speaks of. So when Sri Aurobindo speaks of the Supreme Light shall illumine us with the truth, yes, here it is, Savitri. And Sri Aurobindo had taken very special, I may say, interest in writing Savitri. The word writing is a very poor word, but in giving a Savitri. There were some earlier drafts of Savitri, but the real work started after 1941 on Savitri. You can say that almost last 10 years was the period when we have the complete realization of Savitri in a concrete form of word, a volume, a book. There is something important in this date. It is said that the first draft of Savitri was made by Sri Aurobindo when he was in Baroda, long before he came to Pondicherry. He had made the first draft. But I will say there is a difference of world and heaven between that draft. Even between the earlier drafts of Sri Aurobindo and what he started writing after 1941. The composition of Savitri in the last 10 years roughly is putting the record of realization in a concrete form by which the divine can manifest in our life. The important point is, by that time, Sri Aurobindo's own yoga sadhana, yoga tapasya, I will say, had advanced to such an extent that the supramental light started working in his physical. The supramental light and force started working in his physical body. And it is that realization which you see in the text of Savitri, if you want to call it a text of Savitri, a revelation of Savitri. In fact, on 8th August 1938, he had the first realization of the supramental light entering into the brain, into his throat, into his heart, into his feet, into his entire physical body, what he calls in a sonnet, the golden light. The golden light came in my brain, the golden light came in my throat, the golden light came in my heart, the golden light came in my feet. The supramental light has started entering into the physical. That is absolutely the most unique thing that has happened ever in the spiritual annals of the supramental light, the divine light working in the physical. The physical was not aware of it, but now suddenly it has started opening to the higher power, supramental power. And therefore, the word Savitri, which comes to us, comes with that power, supramental light and force. Therefore, I say the last 8 years or 10 years of Savitri composition are altogether of a different kind than all the previous works of his. Not only his works, but also the works of the entire spiritual history. It makes a difference altogether. Now, to enter into that kind of Savitri, what we mortals can do, small creatures, with all our limitations, with ignorance, death-bound, what can we do? But that is precisely the reason why we should go to Savitri. enter into his spirit. We did not do anything. We need not really do anything. Savitri will do everything for us. The power of realization, the power of that word is such that it will do whatever has to be done in us. We will not be even aware of it, that it is happening in us. That is the beauty of the whole thing. When a few days ago, Umaji came to my house to invite me for the talk, she gave me this beautiful invitation card. It's so beautifully done. And I was stunned, happy, very jubilant to see on the very first page, a little frightening also, on the very first page, my talk here today. I didn't realize that this will happen at that time. But the greatest surprise for me was the topic she has mentioned, she has already put in this leaflet, the secret knowledge. I was stunned to see that word, the secret knowledge. I don't know what prompted her, what inspired her, what made her choose this particular theme for me. Perhaps it is intended to be that way. And it is not an easy job for me to do proper justice for a topic like this, the secret knowledge. But before we go to the secret knowledge, by the way, this word, this canto, secret knowledge, is the fourth canto in Book 1, the Book of Beginning, fourth canto. And just to say very briefly, in the beginning, in the earlier canto, canto 3, Ashwapati, the protagonist of Savitri, has already the realization of his soul's liberation from ignorance. His soul is free from ignorance. That is a major achievement. And that it happens right in the beginning. Right in the beginning it happens. His soul is free of ignorance. What people would call moksha. He has already got moksha at a very, very early stage of his yoga tapasya, Ashwapati. But the purpose of moksha, release of the soul from ignorance, is in a way you are speaking, a small beginning. It is a small beginning. There are heights and heights of beauty, grandeur, loveliness, knowledge, power, truth, sweetness, heights and heights. One has to reach them. Reach them for what? To be there. That is not going to serve the purpose of this creation. If you want to realize beauty elsewhere, joy elsewhere, sweetness elsewhere, what is its use here? It has to come down into our physical. And that is the entire yoga tapasya of Ashwapati. The line says, I will read those 3 lines when he had his first realization. a static oneness and dynamic power. Static oneness and dynamic power. Descend in him in integral Godhead's seals. They are the integral Godhead seals, static oneness and dynamic power. His soul and body, it's not only soul, his soul and body take that splendid stamp. Static oneness and dynamic power take that oneness stamp. Now, this is the beginning of realization of Ashwapati. It is also autobiographical. It is the beginning of Sri Aurobindo's Yoga Tapasya. As early as 1908, he had these two realizations, static oneness and dynamic power. He had these two realizations within few months of each other. The first realization, static oneness, that was in the first week of January 1908 in Baroda. January 1908, first week, in fact, maybe around 1st or 2nd of January 1908 in Baroda. Static oneness. What he calls elsewhere as silent mind. He got a silent mind around that time. Static oneness. Passive Brahman, if you want to say metaphysically, passive Brahman. That is the first realization. The second realization, dynamic power. All this is the play of that power. She is working here, everywhere, dynamic power. That realization he got within few months of the first realization. It was in Alipur jail when he was incarcerated as an under trial prisoner, maybe around August 1908, when Krishna would come and guide him what to do. He used to see everywhere nothing but that presence. Everywhere the divine presence, dynamically present. Whether it is the prisoners there, whether it is the ward, whether it is the officials, whether it is the court justice, whosoever, everywhere he saw only he. That is a dynamic power, he has realization. So these two basic realizations came to him in 1908 at such an early age, which otherwise take lives and lives to get accomplished in our spiritual pursuit. In fact, there is hardly any example, hardly any post-Vedic example. Vedic, I mean, of the period of Rigveda. Any example where a spiritual person has both the relations simultaneously in him. He may have the experience of static Brahman. He may have the experience of active Brahman. But both together, I think this is for the first time it is happening. And that is the most unique kind of an experience. Now, it is that will become the foundation for his yogic pursuit, Sri Aurobindo's yogic pursuit, Ashwapati's yogic pursuit. That is the foundation. Ashwapati, or the legend, had this early experience, static oneness and dynamic power. Ashwapati in Savitri as a symbol takes it further. To realize this thing universally. What is here? Psycho-spiritual individual sadhana of Ashtapati. Psycho-spiritual individual sadhana of Ashtapati. It has to become something for the universe, for the cosmos. For him, it is not necessary, but for his work, it is necessary, because his work is concerned with this world. And he has to tackle the issue, this basic problem of this creation here. That is why it is necessary, you see. With this understanding of things, he gets the secret knowledge. Ashtapati gets the secret. Once the soul is free of ignorance, then the secret knowledge has a meaning. Until then, secret knowledge has no meaning. The secret knowledge is freedom of the spirit. Freedom of the spirit from the bondage of nature. Freedom of the spirit from the bondage of nature. That is what the secret knowledge is going to do to Ashtapati. He gets all the intricate chords, relationships, the workings of nature in us, and how to handle it, how to tackle the problems of this creation. Of that he gets a knowledge. And that is what we have in Canto 4 of Savitri, the secret knowledge. We will try to see some of the aspects of that in our own way, with our own foolishness of understanding. But maybe that could also be, in one way or the other, of some help. And that should be our satisfaction. I told you, Savitri runs into 24,000 lines. I got some statistics here. It has about 6,000 sentences. Savitri has about 6,000 sentences. Roughly 24,000 lines. Although in the printed textbook, the first edition of Savitri, which came out during the time of Sri Aurobindo, the first edition of Savitri, during the time of Savitri, has 23,811 lines. So it is little short of 24,000. But if you see many of the lines which did not get incorporated in the final text, they are present in his manuscripts. So if you really add up all that thing, we indeed have 24,000 lines of Savitri. 24,000 lines of Savitri, roughly 180,000 words. That is the kind of figure we get from that, 180,000 words. Compared with that, what we have in Canto 4, the secret knowledge, there are 8 sections in it, 214 sentences, 963 lines, 7,500 words. In other words, the secret knowledge consists essentially of 4% of the entire Savitri. The entire Savitri, if you take 100, then secret knowledge has a lot of 4% of the entire Savitri. Yet, this is a very difficult canto. The secret knowledge is a very difficult canto. But the question is, what is not difficult in Savitri? Every canto, every line is a difficult line. It was the hour before the gods awake. One of the most difficult lines in Savitri. There is not even one single complicated word in that, but the entire essence, the entire crux of the poem is condensed in one single line. It was the hour before the gods awake. Not only it gathers up the whole of theme of Savitri, it also displays the beauty of its metrical composition. It was the hour before the gods awake. The entire style of Savitri, poetic style of Savitri, is present in one single line. It is a pentametrical line. It was the hour before the gods awake, 5 feet, practically iambic. And almost monosyllabic, except before, monosyllabic throughout. Not only that, it is also what is called an end-stopped line. The blank verse of Savitri is end-stopped blank verse. So, that is the complication of one Savitri. If you want to start reading more and more of it, you see many layers of meaning underneath that, you see. The first draft of the secret knowledge, I would say, was ready by 1942. It was first published as a fascicle in 1947. Then, of course, naturally, it also found its place. It has to be there in the first edition of Savitri, 1950. 1950 edition of Savitri, Part 1, came out in September 1950. So September is important. So in September 1950, the first edition came out. In other words, Shebendhu has seen this thing himself, physically, in print. But later, we people started entering in different ways into Savitri. And we have now what is called the revised edition of Savitri, which came out in 1993. Between the revised edition of Savitri, which came out in 1993, and the first edition, which came out in September 1950, there are 73 departures. Between the two texts of this canto, there are 73 departures. Most of them are concerned with punctuation, with capitalization, and a few verbal changes. Now, revised edition is a question of judgment by the editors. So we may give some value to it, we may not. The safest thing is go by the first edition of Savitri. The problem of Savitri is something blocking the advance of the divine event. On the very first page of Savitri, you have got a forwarding mind of night standing in the path of the divine event. What is the divine event? Supramental manifestation. Supramental manifestation, that is the divine event. Against that possibility of supramental manifestation, who is coming in the way? The mind of night. That is what the text says. It was the hour before the gods away. Across the path of divine event, the huge forwarding mind of night alone is standing on the path. Mind of night. What is mind of night? As I said, it's a very difficult thing again. What is not difficult in Savitri? This is one good example of it. But we can try to pick up its understanding by some other parallel features in his writings. Shivandu speaks of the mind of light, with his experience of the golden light entering into this physical. What is happening is his mind of light has opened to the supramental light and force. His mind. What is mind of light? It is the physical's mind. The mind of the very physical, material mind. It is the physical's mind which is receiving the supramental light and force. And it is that which has started happening. Therefore, the mind of night, we can infer, is the physical's mind under the subjugation of darkness, controlled by darkness, the physical's mind. The obstacle is the mind of the physical not opening because it is under the shadow, thick shadow of inconscience. And therefore, the entire yoga sadhana has to be focused on making this mind of night open, the physical's mind open to the supramental light and force. Shivandu says the supramental manifestation, supramental descent, is decreed in a small little booklet. He speaks of the mother. He speaks of, it is decreed that the supramental light will come down here. Who has decreed it? Obviously, Shivandu himself has decreed it. Shivandu himself has decreed it. That supramental manifestation has to be here. But the difficulty is this mind of night. And therefore, from 1928 onward, he said this thing, decreed in 1928 in that little book, Mother. All his yogic thrust was to see how the physical mind opens more and more to the higher light, higher power, higher consciousness. That he has achieved in 1938, as I said, the golden light. But that is not sufficient. It is decreed, it is not sufficient. But how is it going to manifest? That is more important. That is perhaps equally more important. That is the work of the mother. It is mother who is going to manifest it. He will decree, he will will it, he will put his yogic force in it, but the actualization of that on the physical plane here is her work. That is why she has to come down here upon earth and do the necessary yoga sadhana to see that what is decreed is realized in practice here on earth. The mother's agenda tells you many, many, many things of that kind. And we have to really read mother's agenda, mother's proper agenda, the essential agenda. You forget about the rest of the stuff. Essential agenda concerned with the physical work, physical transformation. That is what I call the essential agenda. That essential agenda has to be read along with Savitri. These two together have to be read together. Savitri and the essential agenda. In fact, in a way, if I may dare to say, the essential agenda spiritually goes a step farther than Savitri. If you really read it carefully, it goes a step farther than Savitri. We have not yet started reading agenda in that sense at all. And I think we have certainly made Savitri as our scripture, as our book of study. We worship it also. But that essential agenda has to be joined with that. That is what I am saying. So it is to give us the agenda, the essential agenda, that she has to come down. Not in the transcendent. What is decreed has to be realized. So she has to take birth in this mortal world. She has to take mortal birth. She has to condescend to pass the portals of the death, to the portals of the birth. That is the death. Portals of the birth, that is the death. This is the sentence from the mother. Condescend to pass through portals of the birth, that is the death. She comes, she obliges. She gives up her royalty, her greatness, and accepts the mortal birth. Mortal birth to alleviate the lot of this humankind, of creatures, of this world. But how is she going to come down? She will come down only when the necessary ground is kept ready for her. Necessary ground for her work is ready here. And that is exactly what Ashwapati does. Savitri comes at the compulsion, at the compelling prayer of Ashwapati. A world's desire compelled her mortal birth. That is how the third canto begins. A world's desire compelled her mortal birth. Who is carrying that world's desire? Ashwapati. He is carrying that world's desire to the Supreme, to the Divine Mother herself, and tells her, Madam, you please come down and do this work. He compels her. Now, in order to achieve that kind of power to compel her, Ashwapati has to do yoga, intense yoga. He himself is the delegate of eternity, Ashwapati. But having taken birth in this mortal world, accepted all its limitations, he has to get out of them by doing yoga. And then approach her to take mortal birth. So Ashwapati sadhana consists of three aspects. One is the psycho-spiritual realization of him as an individual. Then do sadhana not for himself, but for the world here, for the mortal world. That is the thing. He does that. He climbs stairs and stairs and stairs, ladder, and approaches the Divine Mother. At her gate he stands, she comes out from the other side, and they meet. And he prays, please, this is your job, and you have to come down and do the work. That is the transcendental yoga of Savitri. So we have got individual yoga, universal yoga, transcendental yoga. This is threefold yoga Ashwapati is doing. So in that whole process, the secret knowledge he gets as a part of the individual happens at the very early stage itself, you see. And then the whole thing. How is she going to do the work? Well, she is compelled, she will come. She has to find an occasion to meet death. Death, who is standing across the path of divine event, symbolizing that personality. You may say the mind of night. Death. How is she going to meet death? That happens in the physical death of her husband, Satyavan. She comes here, takes mortal birth, and vows to be with Satyavan. Exactly 1 year after their marriage, Satyavan should die. This was the day when Satyavan must die. Savitri is now prepared to do that kind of a thing. Excuse me, how long I can talk? How long can I talk?
12:30, and after 12:30 question answer session.
12:30? Yes. Okay. I will try to finish off quickly here. So, Savitri comes, takes the mortal birth. She meets Satyavan. There is the death of Satyavan, and that becomes the occasion for Savitri to encounter death. She wins victory over him, and the path is kept open. The gates are opened out. The gates are opened out for the life divine to flow upon earth. Not only the life divine, it is symbolized by the coming down of Krishna and Kali on earth. Savitri is bringing down the soul of Satyavan from the transcendent, and while she is coming down, Krishna and Kali follow her to earth. Krishna, the being of Ananda, of bliss. Kali, the dynamic divine force which actually realizes things here. So they come down together as a part of that. So that is the basic theme. Now, I will quickly run section by section through some of the broad hints of the canto. There are, as I said, 8 sections in the canto. First section is a short circle, 30 sentences, 126 lines. And what does Ashwapati see? There are all-seeing eagle peaks of power, eagle peaks of silent power, and moon flame oceans of fathomless bliss. Wider consciousness opens its doors. That is what Ashwapati, after his soul's release from ignorance, sees. Eagle peaks, silent powers, wider consciousness. This is what he is. Now with that, from that height, he sees greater grandeur. Now in contrast to this vision of Ashwapati, ours is a very small little way of doing things. We are bound by limitations. We are bound by limitations. And we don't have the perspective of things. But fortunately for us, there is the earth goddess herself. It is not we. The earth goddess herself is laboring for this human creature here. She is laboring for this human creature here. And her prayer, her longing, her vision is for the sake of this man here, this mortal here. Vision of supernal powers, that is what the earth goddess's longing is doing for us. We are not aware of it. We get concerned only with inconsequential things, small little petty things. That is our smallness, that is our littleness. We don't have vision. In contrast to that, the earth goddess is doing, we are not aware of what is happening to us. In contrast to that, the immortals, maybe in your mind world, the immortals even see something very significant happening at this point. The forcing event, they are seeing here coming, the divine obstacle which was there, that is going away, and the forcing event is approaching very fast on earth. That is what the immortals are seeing. Immortals, I would say, belonging to the overmind world. They see that thing. What do they see? They see a new creation. They see a new race arriving on earth. We are not aware of it, but the immortals are aware of it. Not only they see these things, they also hear the galloping hose of power approaching with a rider, golden rider, approaching upon the earth. This is what they are seeing, and we are not aware of it. So when they see that the superhuman rider is nearing earth, they feel assured that the work will be done, the work is practically done, and therefore they return, they go back, the work is done and they return. The superhuman rider is coming, and the immortals return back to the hills of God from where they had come. So that is the assurance they have given to us. We are not aware of it. In our limitations, in our ignorance, we don't know it. But something behind the scene, in the occult, all these things are already happening. Why they are happening? Because the yogi has done his yoga tapasya and prepared the whole work for us. So he sees the superhuman rider coming, and now things will happen. You see. It is with that realization, Ashwapati tells that we, in our consciousness, no knowledge of the Supreme. We have no knowledge of the inconscience. In other words, the two ends of this creation, the superconscient and the inconscient, we are not aware of them. What Rishi Vamadeva in the Rigveda says, Rigveda, he says, Rishi Vamadeva, his head and feet are invisible. His head and feet are invisible. So you have got the whole being there, but his head, superconscious, his feet, the inconscious, they are not invisible. They are unknowable to us. Now it is there, the whole problem is there. Now, Ashwapati's concern is how to make these two ends meet, the superconscient and the inconscient. The alpha and the omega, that is what the text is, the alpha and the omega have to join together in order to carry out the work further. The alpha and omega must join together. In that process, the supremacies which are locked in the thoughts of God, they will get revealed. And we will know what is going to happen here. Now, they will get revealed. How? There are two powers working together conjointly, the twin power, presence and power, being and nature, Purusha and Prakriti, Brahma and Maya. They are working together constantly to see that these two ends get joined together. And their work is important, and it is that work which goes on, you see, presence and power. There is a functional division between Shakti and Purusha. He has given the entire charge to her with full freedom to act in her own way. He stands behind to support her, to give her sanction, to give her approval. He witnesses the whole show of her, because in that process he knows that it is he who is going to profit by her work. So he has left the entire thing in her hand, Purusha and Prakriti. Now this Purusha and Prakriti is the Sankhya description, but the Sankhya of the book of Canto 4 here is not the conventional Sankhya, in the sense that conventional Sankhya believes in many Purushas and one Prakriti. Many Purushas and Prakriti. Shivandu does not see that at all, anywhere. It is not. So this is different kind of a Sankhya which is really being given to us for the first time in the spiritual history. Sankhya is as old as the Rigveda. In the Gita, you have got a long discourse on Sankhya. But this particular Sankhya is the one which brings out things differently altogether. Then we have behind this whole process the story of creation. How did the whole thing start? How did the whole thing start? And this, in a way, parallels what we have in the Rigveda. Him Mandala 10, hymn 129, the hymn of creation. In Savitri, we had the full exposition of that hymn. What is left by way of hints, that secret has been disclosed to us by Sribendu in Savitri in this canto. I will just read a couple of lines from that. The absolute, the perfect, the alone has called out of the silence his mute force. See, he is alone, absolute, perfect. He is by himself totally, without a companion, totally non-manifest. Now, out of his own being, he has called his force. He has called his own. In the Greek mythology, the birth of Athena is from the hands of Zeus. She springs from the hands of Zeus. Here, this power of his is coming from his own body, has called out of the silence his mute force, and it is that mute force which is now active. The absolute, the perfect, the alone has entered with his silence into space, into manifestation. He has now come into manifestation because of her. Otherwise, he remains totally non-manifest there. But because of her, he has come into existence. In other words, the manifestation which he brings out is her creation with him there behind. With this creation of her, she becomes the mother, the first mother. This silence, this mute force becomes the mother. And her first child of this silence is Sachidananda. Sachidananda is the first child of this lady, whom Rigveda calls Aditi. So she is the first, her first child is Aditi. Now it is from this Sachidananda that the entire process of creation begins. Supermind, an aspect of Sachidananda. Sachidananda knows himself as Sachidananda by the power of his supermind. It is supermind which makes Sachidananda aware that he is Sachidananda. Now that creative power of Sachidananda, of supermind, it is that which initiates the entire process of involution and evolution. You have got over mental world, down, into the inconscious. For what? So that he may be many in his forms. Bahusyam prajayeti. He may be in his many forms. That is the whole purpose behind the creation. Many in his form, in his own way, not as an individual, as a single. He wants to be many. Each one having his own character, his own personality, his own individuality. That is the whole process of manifestation. And for that, he wants to be many, and he comes to that. He has made this tenement of flesh, the supreme non-manifest tenement of flesh. His image in human measure cast, that to his divine measure we might rise. That is the whole idea. He has made himself, cast himself into flesh, so that the whole thing again becomes the divine. Involution, evolution are expressed in a single line. This transfiguration is earth's due to heaven. A mutual debt binds man to the Supreme. His nature we must put on as he put ours. We are sons of God and must be, even as He, sons of God must become sons of God. His human portion, we must grow divine. So, the purpose of joining these two, Alpha and Omega, is to reach this point in creation. Why Alpha and Omega should join together? Because ultimately it is this thing we should manifest fully. For that, for us it's a paradox that God, who is all bliss, should have created suffering and pain. God, who is immortal, should have given death to us. God, who is all truth, should have made falsehood here. That is a paradox to us. But the key for the paradox is God Himself. God has made that thing purposefully so that we become divine. So that we become divine. That is the whole purpose of His creation, you see. We become divine. To be many, Bahusyam Prajayati. That is the simple reason for this creation. And this was stated by the Upanishad itself. Bahusyam Prajayati was stated by the Upanishad. In Taittiriya Upanishad, you have this phrase, Bahusyam. I want to be many. From the non-existent, I want to be many. From what is not manifest, from that I want to be many. So that vision is there. Now, the concretization of that vision had to wait till the arrival of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. And we are at that juncture here. Bahusyam Prajayati. Now, the flame pioneers are descending down the amber stairs of life. Bahusyam Prajayati is being realized in this age of ours. We are so fortunate in that respect to see them. Now, in order to do this work, Ashwapati has to move on to find one who can bring about this miracle. Ashwapati approaches the Divine Mother, but before that, he has to go through stairs and stairs and stairs. He has to climb the staircase of this creation, of this manifestation. He is described here as a voyager. Ashwapati is described as a voyager. He goes from sea to sea, from sea to land, and many places like that. Can I find somebody here who can transform this world? Can I find somebody here in the world of matter to transform this? No. Can I find somebody in the world of life? No. Can I find somebody in the world of mind? No. He goes. Can I find somebody in the overmind world? No. He has to go to supermind. And he reaches the transcendental power there. And there, yes, if something can happen here, it is from there. From the supramental only it can happen. Therefore, with that conviction, with that realization, he approaches the Divine Mother. So that is the whole scene of Ashwapati as a sailor on the waters of existence here. In Canto, in section 8, this is what we have got. That is how the section ends, you see. Well, that is the broad summary of the canto in 8 sections. He sees glory there, he sees the contrast here, he sees the immortals seeing the event coming down, he sees the contrast between Alpha and Omega, he finds out the solution lies in resolving that, He knows the working of Purusha and Prakriti. He goes further up like that. And then he recites the hymn of creation. Yes, it is God who has to do all that things. God, creation, has to be resolved by God Himself, not we. We are only instruments in that process. Now, with this brief summary, let me touch upon a couple of related aspects. Savitri is a poem. And we should not forget that Savitri is a poem. Why did Sri Aurobindo write this canto at all? The secret knowledge. It is so heavily metaphysical. As I said, that metaphysics, spiritual metaphysics of this canto is the difficulty of this canto. There are other cantos with other difficulties. The difficulty of symbolism is there. The difficulty of fate is there. The difficulty of death is there. The difficulty of the occult is there. All those things are present. All those difficulties are present. But this particular canto presents the difficulty of the metaphysical mind, and that has been resolved here. Yet, although it is heavily metaphysical, his poetry is absolutely overhead poetry, what Sri Aurobindo calls the overhead poetry. Overhead poetry, that which comes with silent mind. It just comes down like a downpour, sea of inspiration. It is that which is what I got here. Now, metrically, there are many beautiful things in Savitri. I will just give a couple of examples. In this particular canto, I will just give you a couple of examples of that. Let me read a few lines. Our souls can visit in great lonely hours still regions of imperishable light, all seeing eagle peaks of silent power and moon flame oceans of swift fathomless bliss and calm immensities of the spirit space. Now just imagine, with all that metaphysical load, how the poetry kind of gets relieved of it completely. Something which comes out in a totally different way altogether. Our souls can visit in great lonely hours, silent mind. Visit what? Regions of imperishable light, all seeing eagle peaks of fathomless bliss and calm immensity. This is pure overhead poetry, mystic poetry at its best. And that is the beauty of this canto. It is not really that metaphysics which matters, but it is the power of the poetry which relieves you of that metaphysical burden, completely, see. All seeing eagle peaks of silent power, moon flame oceans. What do you understand by moon flame oceans? I don't have to explain it. You have to understand yourself. Moon flame oceans of swift, fathomless bliss. Fathomless because it is an ocean. Moon flame, swift. Moon, soma, bliss, ananda, moon, flame, ocean. So there is a kind of a poetic coherence in the whole line. And calm immensities of the spirit space. That is the power of the poetry here, you see. There is another one beautiful example. Our minds hush to a bright omniscient. Our minds, when you see that bright omniscient, they fall silent. They become helpless. Our minds hush to a bright omniscient. This is a very peculiar line in the sense that here our minds hush to bright omniscient. It doesn't say omniscience. Omniscient is an adjective. So here adjective is used as a noun. Hush to bright omniscient. That is something politically very powerful, very different altogether. And it brings a kind of an impact on you that omniscience is there. You see. Our minds, I am hushed to spirit. A bright, I am omni, I am scient, spirit. So you have got, that's the mythical scheme. So like that there are many beautiful things, but I will skip them and move on to another aspect. As I said, Savitri is a poem. And Srimandu tells that the real poetry can come out only when there is true inspiration. He says, inspiration and poetic technique, it is not the poetic technique so much. One has to be, of course, the master of poetic technique, the poetic art, but more than that, it is the power of inspiration which brings its own technique. So it is the power of inspiration which brings its own technique. That is what counts here most, you see. So the whole of Savitri, if you see at its technique, it is definitely overhead poetry, and metrically it is absolutely perfect with such nuances and variations and that kind of thing. But everywhere it is the inspiration which is force which brings the technique automatically into picture. See? Srimandu writes about poetic art. There are three intensities which are important. The highest intensity of the rhythmic movement. There is no poetry without rhythm. Highest intensity is rhythmic intensity. Then there is the intensity of verbal sense. The sense has to be intense. It should be meaningful, stuffy, luminously stuffy. And then, of course, soul's vision of truth. That is the third intensity. Soul's vision of truth is to be a part of the poetic paraphernalia, you see. So, rhythmic movement, verbal and substantial thing, and soul's vision, they form the natural elements of high poetry, the overhead poetry. That is what we have got everywhere in Savitri. And in spite of the metaphysical nature of this canto, it is so rich in poetry. That is what I am trying to emphasize here. See, there is throughout in it, in this canto, the inspiration coming from the overmental plane. It is not always overmind lines, but the overmental influence, overmental afflatus is present everywhere, you see. There is a sound of silence which fills the spaces. It is the sound of silence which will. The sky and the earth, they are filled with the sound. I will quickly read. One passage from Savitri. It is a 14-line passage, a single sentence running into 14 lines. Only the immortals on the deathless heights, dwelling beyond the walls of time and space, masters of living, free from the bonds of thought, who are overseers of fate and chance and will, and experts of the theorem of world need, can see the idea, the might that change time's course, come men down with light from undiscovered worlds. Here, while the world toils on with its deep blind heart, the galloping hoofs of the fathomless, of the unforeseen event, bearing the superhuman rider near and impassive to earth's din and startled cry, return to the silence of the hills of God. 11.38. 11.38. As lightning leaps, as thunder sweeps, they pass and leave their mark on the trampled breast of life. This is one single sentence in 14 lines. And see the power of poetry and the variation. Theme swiftly changes from line to line, half line here, half line there, completely sweeping throughout, you see. If you read this particular passage repeatedly, number of times, you will see its power kind of makes impact on your very physical. On your very physical. That is the power of this poetry here, you see. There is a style of recitation in Sanskrit rendering, what is called Ghana Part. Ghana Part, the repetitive recitation of words, Ghana Part. Now, if you read this passage in Ghana style, a group of people reading them in Ghana style, you will see that the whole vibration is completely getting filled here. This room here, the whole thing kind of vibrates with luminous density. I will just give an example of this one, how one reads this Ghana Part. Only the immortals on the deathless heights, dwelling beyond the walls of time and space, masters of living, free from the bonds of thought. Already it has made a kind of impact. But if you read now the Ghana style, only the immortals on their deathless heights, dwelling beyond the walls of time and space, dwelling beyond the walls of time and space, only the immortals on the deathless heights, only the immortals on the deathless heights, dwelling beyond the walls of time and space, masters of living, free from the bonds of thought, masters of living, free from the bonds of thought, dwelling beyond the walls of time and space, only the immortals on the deathless heights, only the immortals on the deathless heights, dwelling beyond the walls of time and space, masters of living, free from the bonds of thought. See, the accumulation of sound makes a kind of a physical impact on you. So that is the power of this poetry. That is the power of this poetry. Although this is a metaphysical canto, but it is tremendous in its sound and its impact, you see. The subtlety and many-sidedness of thought running through it is an absolute marvel, this canto. In the sense that the more we ponder on it, the more of the incoming truth of the truth world enters into our stuff. Realm after luminous realm opens in inner dimensions. as much as the sublimity of heights that hardly our vision can reach, all in wide and bright, enthusiastic, joyous spaces. That is the power of authentic revelatory poetry. This is what the immortals have given us. All this is possible. What the immortals are telling, yes, the writer is coming. All this is possible because above the world stand the world creators. They are not sitting idle. They are not watching the game indifferently. They are involved directly in one. But who are these immortals? Who are these immortals? The Rigveda speaks of our forefathers. Already we don't know the history of Rigveda, which is at least 10,000 years old, Rigveda. And the Rigveda Rishi says, our forefathers. We don't know how far back we have to go in history. Are those forefathers who are coming here now, these immortals, those immortals, are they those forefathers coming here? Or are they the beings of light in the overmental world? Or are they the mighty gods who dwell in the infinity of the home of truth? Perhaps none. Those who are coming are the flame pioneers. Ashwapati, in his yoga tapasya, in the house of the spirit, has created a new world already. A new world already exists up there. And the issue is how to bring down the new world. It is from that new world these immortals are coming. Not our forefathers, not overmental gods, not even the higher gods, but those beings who are present in the new creation up there. They are coming down and telling us, yes, get ready. Those are the immortals here. In this passage, there is one very powerful line. You'll excuse me to say about that thing, because I am kind of fascinated by it. I have scanned the whole passage, and that is available in my notes also. Now, there is one line here. These immortals, they hear while the world toils on with a deep, blind heart. They hear the coming down of the Superman rider. All those immortals, they hear that. And while the world, they are coming down. But we here, world toils on with deep, blind heart. That is we have to get ready for that. Now, this particular line, I scan it in a little unusual way. Here, while the world toils on with a deep, blind heart, I will call it what is called a headless line. Headless line. This is a very typical example. So that is the art of poetry of Savitri. He uses every kind of possibilities that are available. This is a headless line. Headless means the line opens with a single syllable as a foot. A single syllable as a foot. And the rest follows. Single syllable as a foot, the line opens. So here, that is the single syllable. Here, while the world, Anapist, toys with trucking, toils on with its spirit, deep, blind heart, three strong syllables, with a deep, blind heart. what is called the molossus. Molossus. So the line is a headless line ending with a molossus. Deep, blind heart. Three powerful words coming together, you see, monosyllabic. Headless line ending with a commanding molossus. A rare jewel indeed. That is the beauty of poetic art of Savitri, you see. Let me skip some of these things here. Now, this canto is preparing for the physical transformation. As I said, he has decreed this pyramidal descent. She is the one who is now doing it forward. So the extension of this canto is in what they are doing now. And one of the first things which you say, the extension, the foundation of the secret knowledge is carrying her work into the agenda. That is, now the mother says, I will read a small quotation from the mother, from the agenda. It was to realize the phenomenon of consciousness, which would have at the same time phenomenon of consciousness with two things, individual consciousness and the consciousness as a whole, the universal consciousness, individual consciousness and the consciousness, universal consciousness. That's the phenomenon of consciousness here. A consciousness at the same time individual and total. And all this labor is to unite these two. To unite these two together. Two consciousness into one single individual consciousness and the consciousness of totality to be united together. Now that is the real secret knowledge now. The secret knowledge which I got in Savitri has to be extended to this consciousness, single consciousness and the total consciousness to be united together. For the individual consciousness, the thing is translated by time, etc., etc. A new life. And what will that bring? What will that new consciousness will bring? What that new secret knowledge bring? That secret knowledge will bring us a new form, a new life. That is what the mother says. Agenda 30 October 1971. I am quoting from that. 30 October 1971. To acquire a new form and a new life. This is the deepest occult of the secret knowledge. If God's earth built in God's darkness, God's earth built in God's darkness, God lifted the burden of God's fate. So He is doing all that thing. God's earth built in God's darkness, God lifted the burden of God's fate. In festive dynamics of the creative spirit, all that thing has to happen in that. It is the smile, the supreme smile, the Divine Mother's smile. It is a smile that will change the destiny of the world. The Surir ki changera the destiny that you want. The smile that will change the destiny of the world. It is Sri Aurobindo who decreed the supramental change and its manifestation has been the work of the Mother. This has already happened in the subtle physical. This has already happened in subtle physical. Things had to get now prepared on this gross physical earth so that what has been kept ready in the subtle physical, both by Sri Aurobindo and a Mother, they are there, they are doing this work, they have created everything now. it is that which has to translate itself down on the physical. See, this has already happened in the subtle physical world. See the sun world. Who shall raise, raise the earth soul to light and bring down God in the lives of men? And God is now seated flourishingly. God is now sitting in the subtle body of the earth. That is the unknowable supreme executive power of manifestation. And she has taken upon herself that power of manifestation. She has taken upon herself building a supramental race as a next evolutionary step on earth. She has already done. Even though when he passed away, Mother contacted him in the subtle physical, and he told her she wanted him to come back. He said, no, I will come back in a supramental body, made in a supramental way. I will come back in a body made in a supramental way. That is the work ready now. Now, this earth, we creatures, we have to prepare ourselves, get ready to receive that grace, to receive that grace, to receive that grace. Glory to them, glory to them, glory to them. Thank you very much.
So, hope you all enjoyed the program. RYG's extensively he discussed about Savitri on all aspects in the line of life of all life is yoga. Because secret knowledge too must be received with vastness, touching the power of Gayatri Mantra, where he starts as the first idea that is sown among inside us. So it is how the opening and preparing our parts of being with the union of the divine. So then he moves to significance of the golden light, how it enters into Sri Aurobindo's in his physical body from top to down. Same way he throws the light, it is open even for us, his disciples, his devotees, and their aspirants of integral yoga. So then he spoke to us about, through this experience, what will happen when the light touches us. Are we ready for that? So then he talks about the nirvana experience of Sri Aurobindo, where the mind has to be silenced. Only then the idea of the light will seep into us. So beautifully he took us the journey, how we have to prepare with the unity with the inner divinity, and then through that how we have to receive in a quiet mind and silenced mind. And then he talks about Sri Krishna's descent of in Sri Aurobindo. So it is possible even for us that we may become the vehicle for the divine descent into us. And this is how he talks about everything in a very beautiful musical note. It's like lullaby. He took us to the journey, and the real secret. Finally, he talks about the real secret. Since it is very vast subject, he tries to cover. I have to thank him and ask pardon for that because it's a very big topic and big canto. So he beautifully took us to the final one, the real secret, consciousness. This is what we have to land upon, what consciousness we should have, and how we can have that higher consciousness to come into us and be the vehicle to do their work in the new world which has been started, it has been started. So this is the message we want to give to the youth and all the aspirants. Youth in the sense it's not according to a biological youth. The youth, the eternal youth where Sri Aurobindo and Mother insist on. We all are youth always. So it is for us to prepare, and this talk will be there's going to be a link throughout this week. So tomorrow we will be having our dear Malaji is here. She is going to talk about how can we inculcate that in a scientific way. It's a yoga of psychology, or her way of talking to us, and it's her day. So I request you all to come and join in this feast of integral yoga all this week. Okay? Thank you so much. And we have copies of his talk.